under, you know, Obama and Biden administrations in America in terms of censorship there and the censorship we've seen here of free speech over issues like trans issues, COVID and everything else in between. Should we be wanting any new online safety laws to make our children safer?
I'm afraid I don't think we do, but we've got it. I mean, the online safety bill that's now become an act was posed very much to the public as protecting children. And it's very hard to argue against that, isn't it? You kind of immediately think, I don't want children to be exposed to, you know, extreme porn or...
I don't want to be exposed to it.
No, but, you know, I understand the instinct of the general population thinking anything that will protect children is good with me. But the problem with that bill was that, you know, only about 20% of it, if that, would affect children anyway. They just used this bill to bring on huge regulatory changes that would have an impact on the adult population, as you could imagine. And it always feels to me as though they rather cynically use the child protection point to actually assault adult rights. That's the first thing. Secondly, I think it's so ironic that we're having this conversation while this AI summit's going on. Because they say, oh, we're going to have this big AI summit and attract all these big tech companies to come to this country. What? You're just introducing a piece of legislation that basically threatens any technology company that does not scour beforehand and bring out a whole range of policies that says that should any piece of information go on your site, and this can be very small hosting sites, by the way, for the most innocuous topics through to the big, you know, Facebook and X and so on, that could possibly be seen as illegal, then we are going to absolutely clamp down on you and fine you. So they're demanding that the online world, that the big tech, should remove things in case they might be seen as stirring up racial or religious hatred. Now, first of all, it's not clear in the law what stirring up hatred means. These are subjective terms. It's not as though you can say, well, if it's illegal, that's fine. And there was concern originally because they were saying that we should ban things that were legal but harmful, and that caused controversy. But actually, even saying they need to be ahead of the curve and remove anything that's illegal, it's not clear in speech terms, free speech terms, or any other kind of speech, what's legal,
and we had that during the lockdown, didn't we? People, you know, again, we had our YouTube page. I've battered on about this last week. Had our YouTube page taken down for conversations with scientists and medical experts making reasonable points. Oh, by the way, all proven to be completely correct later on. You know, people weren't allowed to say that this came from the Wuhan lab. It did. I mean, anyone who doesn't think so, frankly, hasn't paid attention to the information.
Zuckerberg's, you know, blown the cover off this now. I mean, when those of us who try to argue, look, that there is political interference in this, where governments all around the world, we now know, definitely in America, but it was happening in the UK, were basically saying, could you ensure that what gets out is government health information that's true versus disinformation that's not true? We now know that it was a very one-sided, often propagandist and often not factual version of events at that time. So, of course, the Labour government's come in, and what have they said about the Online Safety Act, which is already draconian and scary, how much power Ofcom are going to have to police what we as users see, say, but, you know, see more importantly, because they will have already removed stuff. The Labour government has said it doesn't go far enough. And in fact have said it's too weak and a sticking plaster, and they're going to look at strengthening it by adding in disinformation and misinformation, the very things which Zuckerberg has really, you know, revealed to us are just propagandist words.
Which he was happy to go along with when it was politically expedient.
Went along with it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't believe for a moment that he's changed his tune on it. But this is the key thing. I mean, again, what is hateful? I mean, well, trans women are men. That would get you taken off any social media site until a couple of years ago. That's considered hateful by most of the Labour Party.
Well, Zuckerberg actually admitted that on issues around gender and sex and around issues around immigration, that it was just assumed that anyone who was posting on those issues was somebody that was creating harmful content, and Facebook removed it. Which meant that if you were to have, I don't know, typed in something like, I'm really worried that mass migration might be harmful for society, that would be, you'd be put in Facebook prison, effectively, right? So you already had that going on. And my only credit to him, it's not to turn him into the hero of the hour, is that he's basically just admitted what the rest of us already knew.
I don't give him a shred of credit. No, I don't give him a shred of credit. He's part of the problem. He's not part of the solution. It's all about making money, and I don't mind him doing that, but I'd rather he was just honest about it. But you go back to what you said about, you know, again, everything is always shrouded in this idea of like, oh, well, it's all about protecting children. But you can't identify children unless you can also identify adults. Otherwise, children will just say they're adults. At which point, surely, we have to identify who we are. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, you shouldn't be on social media if you've not identified who you are. Well, yeah, say that to people campaigning for, you know, basic political rights in countries like China or elsewhere in the world. You know, there is a reason why some people want to be maintain their anonymity.
Anonymity is hugely important.
And whistleblowers, for instance, and the like. But I can't see how you can regulate anything for children unless you're able to identify that someone is a child. You can only do that by identifying everyone individually as an adult.
Well, you know, there are clever people in tech who say that there are markers that can do that.
Yeah,
but otherwise, age verification is exactly as you say, which is it will break anonymity. And I think particularly in light of what we now know to be true around the grooming gangs and the rape gangs, which I know obviously we've all been discussing for a long time. What you need is anonymity for whistleblowing originally. You need people to be able to say, has this happened? I read a fascinating anonymous account from somebody who works in the health service about what has been going on in terms of not being able to talk about these issues in relation to young girls, right? And he then went on to explain that he was anonymous because he'd lose his job.
Exactly.
And we know that that's so important. But the other thing about it is, and this is when you talk about children, what is so sickening is the government have come out and said, for the sake of protecting children from, for example, sexual molestation and grooming, are going to clamp down on the internet.
Yeah.
The same government that at the same time is saying, oh no, we don't need to specifically look at what's happened in those northern towns in relation to online grooming. And it is the case that stirring up hatred of religion or ethnicity was exactly the excuse that was used to prevent people from investigating the largely Pakistani gangs that were physically, not online, but they're in the flesh, abusing those young women. So the double standards, the two-tier approach, as we keep saying, this is where you really get so infuriated, because I do not believe that this is going to help children.
No.
This online safety
The paedophiles always find a way round it. You know that, I know that. They just go to them. I mean, I don't even know what teenagers are communicating on. I know it's not WhatsApp. It's not. They're onto something. They're three different apps on from the rest of us. So they're not. Most MPs don't even know how X works, for God's sake.
No, it's a terrible challenge. I understand for parents, right? I mean, I do understand this. That if you're, a parent of a young person, you think, God, won't somebody come along and save my children from this? But the truth of the matter is that ultimately parents have to take some responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
For what their kids have access to. Somebody made the point when you wouldn't necessarily give them 50 quid and put them outside the betting shop and tell them to have a good time, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily give them a load of money and stick them in the pub for a day, and if they were 13 or 12, right? So what you maybe have to think is, oh, I might have to deal with the fact that my child has access to this.
Yeah, and take responsibility for it, absolutely. Claire Fox, always so good to talk to you. Baroness Fox, their independent peer and director at the Academy of Ideas, somebody who's been campaigning on free speech so often. I'm so glad she's in the... Don't approve of the House of Lords. As I told her, a lot of people have been put in the House of Lords in recent years. Don't approve of it, but if we're going to have the House of Lords, I'm glad people like Claire Fox is in it. She got tutted at. She got tutted at when she was talking about the grooming gangs issue the other day in the Lords. Tutted at. Quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, she's right, isn't it? Whenever anyone says now, we're going to try and protect children, I always think, oh, OK, and how are you going to do that? And anyway, anyone who uses the term hate speech, I instantly go, well, that's a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But what are they protecting the children from? Because, you know, these platforms that you and I use are not what teenage kids
really are.
and preteens are using. My child only uses WhatsApp to get hold of me. I'm the only person. He doesn't use it for his friends. He said, why would we do that? It's for old people.
Is it Snapchat? I mean, one of the ones I don't know. I don't know.
He's on that.
I have a teenager who tells me off for being on the phone. So, you know, there we are. I've got one of the sane ones. What can you do? Claire, thank you very much.